1978 through 1985. And she made a tremendous impact on this city and in the world. My father was an activist and an educator, a philosophy professor, and he was just a man who was highly respected in everything that he did. So my mom died in 2010, February 13th, 2010, which is the anniversary of her mom's death. If you know anything about my mom's poetry and my mom's writing, you know that her mother's death was a tremendous trauma to her, and for obvious reasons. And so my sister Sidney reached out to the owners of the house on February 13th, 2019, the 9th anniversary of our mom's death, and just wanted to know the status of the house. So imagine her surprise when the woman said to her, the house is actually on the market. We're putting it up for sale today. So my sister knew what she had to do, and she bought the house. So this is sort of where the story starts for us. In terms of reclaiming the house and having it be again what it once was, a sanctuary for creative people and artists and writers and people in cities who know that they have something that they want to give creatively and don't exactly know where they fit in or how they can do that. Our house was always that. So the screen you see here is a picture of Clifton House. The house was throughout the late 60s, all of the 70s and early 80s, a house where you could find anybody, all of us kids and our parents there, happy and creating. So if we can move on to the next slide, if you'd like. I'm going to put on my reading glasses. And this is the story that I just shared with you in my sister's words. On the 9th anniversary of my mother's death, I felt moved to reach out to the woman who owned the house. And it was a clear message that it was time to reclaim our house. And so I did, which is what my sister says. This is a picture of our mom and all of us 6 kids on the steps of the house. And it sort of is symbolic of what it was like for, I think, my mom, surrounded by us kids, and for us, surrounded by siblings and friends, and just kind of loving each other and feeling safe, which is an important thing. So we can move to the next slide. What is legacy? It starts with who. This is an introduction to who my parents are and were. I don't necessarily want to read it word for word with you because it's there and you can do that. But what I can tell you is that I don't know 2 more creative people. I never have known two more creative people than my parents. My mom was born in 1936, died in 2010. At age 73, was a National Book Award winning poet, the only poet to have 2 books of poetry nominated for Pulitzer Prize during the same cycle, won the Ruth Lilly Prize, Robert Frost Medal, and was just known as a woman who was authentic, whose poetry told the truth, and who made us all realize that we're all part of the big picture here, and that we have to live our lives the way that is true to us. And she was a phenomenal woman, professor, mother, teacher, grandmother, sister. She was all of that. My father didn't live a long life, but he lived a phenomenal life. I would say he was an extraordinary, brilliant man. When we first moved to Baltimore from Buffalo, he worked with an organization called Model Cities. He did urban planning and community organizing and activism. During the later years of his life, he worked with UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And he was one of those people that if you have a question about something or if you want something done, you would just go to him and he could figure out what to do, or just knew what to do. And that is what my sister is talking about in terms of what is legacy, and it starts with who. So they were phenomenal people, not just in this city. And that's what's important, because this is global sanctuary that we're talking about here. So we can move to the next slide. Legacy, the what, when, and where. So these are pictures of all of us at Clifton House. Obviously, some of these pictures are older than others. There is at my bottom right, the picture there is of my the sister right above me and myself when we walked through the house for the first time in 40 years after my sister had bought the house. We walked through, and I can't really describe the feeling to you of walking back into a place that you had lost under sad circumstances, and walking in and feeling like, you know what, we actually never lost it. We could see once we walked in the doors that it had been ours all of that time. And the picture right above that one is my sister Gillian and myself on the steps of the house. I was probably 7 or 8 and she was 10 or 11. And so that is the what, the when, and the where. Clifton House is where all of that took place and where all of this will be taking place again. So we can move to the next one if you're ready. Legacy, the why. I honestly can't see this as well without my glasses, but I'm going to lean really close and try to read some of this. Now this isn't going to this isn't going to be pretty, me trying to read this. So there was a recent article in Harper's Bazaar magazine, and I can tell you some things that are interesting about that. That has not been the typical kind of magazine that has featured a lot of information about our mom, our dad, our poetry necessarily. But from that article, we've been getting a lot of attention and a lot of people for whom the story of reclaiming what was lost and truth telling and being authentic and genuine means to all of us, particularly with all that the country and the nation has been through in the past 10 years. And that includes the pandemic and turbulent times and more activism and racism and sexism and all of the things that are disturbing to the universe. We have to walk in our path, and we have examples of people who did that no matter what. And so that is what for us is going to be really important. Sid bought it and has helped all of us heal and reclaim this. So this time, one of the things that she says is that we're going to be really, really good shepherds of it this time. And that's very important to all of us. One of my mom's poems is from 1972 called Spring Song. And it talks about how the future is possible. She had a line in one of her poems that said, now we are possible. And that's what Clifton House feels like. In every way that you can mean that word, it feels possible to all of us now. So we can move to the next. And that is, the how is, it talks about what we have done so far and what has been able to be secured so far in terms of funding. Eve Ensler's foundation made an extremely generous grant to Clifton House, as did the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And the Mellon Foundation we were just over the moon to see that they entrusted us with that kind of a grant, because what we believe is that they're very aware of what we will be capable of doing and how we can have a positive impact on the community. And as I keep stressing, in the world, because we all need this. It's located in Baltimore City, but it's sort of about all of us. And that's really important, but we've been very, very fortunate. Yep, we can, and we can move to the next one. Legacy, what's next? The Clifton House will provide, and I'd like you to read this because I can't see it that well, but also um, I want to be here to answer some questions you might have about what's next and who is welcome here. Everyone. When we moved to Baltimore, one of the things that my parents liked was that the neighborhood had signs that said all are welcome. And that's the same feeling that we want to give people who come here. We are sort of um, like everyone else. You know, COVID protocols are dictating a bit of the pace that we are able to move in. And also we are working on some slight renovations that we're going to have take place in the house. And we need to make sure that we do it well and that we do it right. So we are taking our time with that, but we do have some surprises in the works. We have several things that we're working on right now. I mentioned to Melissa, um, watch out for a possible surprise around the date of our mom's birthday, which was June 27th. Most things will probably start virtually, as is the case for a lot of things right now. But I know that there are some workshops. We're partnering with Howard University that are going to be coming up, I believe, late summer. And we also have some virtual productions that are going to be featuring some other poets and people who are going to discuss mom's work and how it has impacted their work. And just lots of other things. We're going to have just children coming in and learning art and learning animation and all of the areas where people feel like they want to express themselves and aren't sure how to do it. We want it to be that for people. So, and I feel like I have talked far too much, um, but we can move to the next slide, or the legacy. No, that the legacy pictured there is my sister Gillian in the red. I am seated behind her with the flower in my hair. Our sister Sidney is in the front, and our brother Graham is the only male in the picture. This, and the line goes on, "Don't you worry, mister, don't you worry," is from a memoir that my mom wrote called Generations. And I think that's a perfect way to talk about that. What resonates for me, and clearly for a lot of other people, is how what you think very often is lost to you forever is not, but you have to wait until it's time to get to walk back into it. And that's what happened here. It's been an enormous blessing. The Clifton House. So for more information, contact Sidney Clifton. That's my sister. She is the president. The Clifton House Inc. Her cell number 310-592-9722, or you can email cliftonhousebaltimore@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram, which is at Clifton House Baltimore, and Facebook at www.facebook.com/Lucille Clifton Legacy. So those are ways to contact. I see a question that says, what is the address of the house? It is in Windsor Hills neighborhood in west toward northwest Baltimore. The address is 2605 Talbot Road, zip 21216. And other questions I may have missed, but I'm sure that
Yeah, so it looks like someone asked, so do family members still live in Baltimore City or have siblings scattered by time?
my brother Graham is actually staying at the house right now, doing some minor renovations and doing some landscaping there. So he's there. My sister and I are in Fort Washington, Maryland, but not in Baltimore City. And Sidney is in Los Angeles. We have a sister and a brother who are deceased.
And then someone asked, are you looking for donations of art books to build the library? And I guess I'll add on to that. If you are looking for donations of any type, maybe you could tell people how they can donate items.
Sure. I would actually email Clifton House Baltimore at gmail.com. Because I would defer that question to my sister, but I think that probably that would be welcomed. I think that would be great. And that says that people want to participate in this, which is a very good feeling. I thank you for that question.
Yeah, and I guess we can open it up now to anyone else who has questions. You can type it in the chat, or if you're having trouble doing that, you can unmute yourself and ask. I will let it go. I guess I'll leave this on.
Hi, Alexia. This is Debbie. I was really impressed with your talk. Thank you so much.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I was just wondering, do you have a timeline for when you're hoping to have it kind of all up and running, or is that kind of still in the planning stages?
That's still in the planning stages, though it's getting closer to the time when we will have a definite answer about that. So please just keep checking back with us and we will make announcements as they come. But I think that at least in terms of some virtual programming, later this summer, we will have one or two things. Thank you for the question.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Someone asked in the chat, what's your own personal favorite memory of the house?
Oh my goodness. There were so many. It's funny. Though, as I mentioned, we were all born in Buffalo, I don't remember Buffalo that well because I was only 2 or 3 when we moved here. And one of my earliest memories of the house was we would play musical chairs because there were 6 of us, so it was a big family, and we had a big dining room table. Now, I was the youngest of the 6 of us, so I would cheat a little bit. And when we played musical chairs and the music stopped, I remember kind of trying to knock my brother to the side so that I could sit in his chair and not lose musical chairs. I remember that, and Halloweens were really fun in that house, and just holidays, period. So many.
And what's your favorite feature of the house's architecture?
Well, it's gone now, but when we were living there and growing up there, it had an elevator. Now, this was back in the late 60s and early 70s, so you didn't see elevators in houses, and it wasn't anything fancy at all, but it was there. So it was like, wow, we have an elevator in the house. That was probably my favorite feature, and just the size, it was huge.
I'm just curious, does the house need, does it need a lot of work done on it, like structurally and things like that, or?
Structurally, it surprisingly doesn't. When it really had not gone through as many hands as we would have thought. It was, as I mentioned, we had not been there in 40 years and hadn't lived there in that long. So oftentimes that's enough for cycles and cycles of people and families to live in a house. But I think there had only been 2 people, but it didn't look that well cared for on the inside. So there are some things in the interior that we need to change to make it more of a public space rather than a residential space.
Right, great, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have plans to restore the elevator for accessibility?
That's funny. We were talking to Sid about that, and we are probably going to do a lift on some of the, because there's 3 floors, but we're probably going to do a stair lift. I don't think we're going to do an elevator, but that's a good question. Thank you.
I have a question. As someone who has planned programming in your own career, what's the programming that you're most excited about hosting?
Well, anything that has to do with physical activity. I'm by trade, a personal trainer and group exercise instructor. I've been doing that for about 31 years at this point. So anything that has people being active, and engaging with each other I like. So there are some things that probably we will do that will use that skill set, you know.
Any youth programming always has an active element because
It
that's
had
just
better, right?
it's our,
It'll find one even if you don't mean for it to.
right.
Mhm.
Ed is also curious if you have an architect working on the project.
We have had a few contractors who have been working on it kind of one thing at a time. But if you have anything that you want to suggest, or feel free to email or to call the number, and I'll mention them again toward the end. But oh yeah, you've put them up again, but feel free to do that because we're open to suggestions.
And someone asked, are there grounds to make use of as well?
There are. It's gorgeous up there. It's funny. We've had several, we've had some people interested, and there's been a short clip on WBAL TV, and Be More Art has an article, and Baltimore Sun has spoken with us, and I believe that something may be coming from a Baltimore magazine. And when people walk up the steps, the first thing they say is, are we still in Baltimore City? Which is interesting because it also talks about the way that we think about the city as not a place that would have lush grounds and to be gorgeous. And parts of the city are just that. And there's a huge yard. Of course, it doesn't look as big as it did when I was 3, but it's huge, and the grounds are just gorgeous because there's so many mature trees. So I know that Sidney has plans to make use of that, of there being some quiet spaces in the yard that people can utilize.
I love this idea. I also was wondering if there was, it's similar to what we do at the Village Learning Place, and which is great. And I was wondering if there were other, either in Baltimore or just anywhere across the country or around the world, if there are other similar types of artist communities that you guys are looking at for inspiration when you're going through the planning.
For sure. It's always going to be a collaborative effort, and that may just be hearing someone else's thoughts about what they think would be good, or hearing about what someone else has always done. But we have tapped those resources of things that are done similar to this, or people who seem like-minded, or people who knew our parents, who may have a perspective or have known them in a time or a way that we didn't. So absolutely, absolutely.
Love that. Anyone else have any more questions? And now, yeah, I feel like we've peppered you with questions now.
No, that's what I'm here for. I appreciate you being here and being interested. And as I said, we will keep in touch. So I now have Melissa's information. I now have the organization information, and I will be in touch, or Sidney will certainly be in touch. And will, as things come up and as we have more definite dates, we will make announcements. We will let you know because we're excited about it. We're still kind of getting over the awe of, oh my goodness, we actually have it again. So we're excited, and we're glad that you are.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll be excited to continue sharing that with our network as well. Another question came in. Two questions came in. So what is the neighborhood like now? Does it feel the same? Does it still feel welcoming?
Surprisingly, it does. I mean, it shows some signs of wear and tear after 40 years, but you know, I probably do too. I think though that it's still gorgeous, and it still feels the same. As I mentioned, it's been pretty amazing because it feels like in some ways like we never left. It's still very pretty, very mature trees, leafy, and it just seems like a kind of, wow, this is a really special place within the city, just the community. It does.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Someone also asked, this is a good question. So are some of the siblings or all of you following careers similar to that of both of your parents?
What's funny, my mom used to laugh at me because I'm, a fitness trainer, and she used to say that I was, she was my biggest failure because I'd always get on my mom about the way that she would eat things. And I would say, well, Mom, I'm yours because I do love writing. But I'm not a creative writer in that sense. I think the sibling that probably falls the closest to the kind of creativity that they had is Sidney. And when we were little, she was like that. So I think it's something that she has. We probably all are, but in different ways. But she is, I think, the closest to what they did.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Hmm.
Love
Do you
that.
anticipate, I have a question. I
Yeah.
have a quick question. Hi. Thank you for this is wonderful to hear. And I didn't send in the question about the art books, but I will be writing to your sister about ours. So,
Okay, great.
but it was, do you expect the Clifton House to speak? I'm a former museum person. So do you
Mhm.
expect to have some kind of conversation or display or presentation that talks about your parents? Do you see the house leaning more towards your mother's legacy, or will you be doing equal weight for your father's? How do you balance those two?
That's a very good question in terms of legacy and the house and displays and in life. I think they sometimes also had to figure out how to balance that. They were both heavyweights in what they did. We will have something that represents kind of them and their careers, probably in the first room as you come into the house, because there's going to be gallery space. So that's the answer to that. So yes, we will have that. But I think realistically, probably it will lean more toward Mom's career in that hers was a more visible career than my dad's. And she just lived longer than he did. He died at age 49. So there's not as much representation in terms of visuals with him.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone, for questions.
Thank you so much.
If anyone else has
So
any last minute questions,
Mhm.
pop them in there. Otherwise, just as Alexia said, her and I and Sydney and I will be staying in touch, and so we'll be sharing stuff as well.
Definitely.
With, I think I put this in the chat. I'm trying to talk and use Zoom. Sharing stuff as well. So you have all the Clifton House online information, so you can follow them and stay in tune with the Village Learning Place, and we'll share everything that we can.
Great.
Is there anything else before we go off to our evenings? I said I would put the donation link in the chat. So if you'd like to make a donation second Wednesdays, that's in the chat. And for those of you who are interested in making donations to Clifton House, Alexia said get in touch with that email address.
Mhm. Definitely. And I just want to say before we part too that we are truly honored and humbled at the amount of resonance that reclaiming this house has made for everybody. We are really honored to do that. And I thank Sidney for being the visionary behind this. It's going to be a heavy lift, so it's going to take all of us, but she certainly has been the person who made this happen and who saw it before any of us did. So if you keep in mind anything, it's one, come to the Clifton House when it's open, but also don't ever feel like anything is necessarily lost forever, because there's proof that it doesn't have to be.
That's a great note to end on. I love this. Oh yeah, and then I guess I just want to mention, because it was slipped in at the beginning and it was new news to me, that the Clifton House was just featured in Harper's Bazaar magazine, which is so incredible. It looks like that's up online. So like Alexia mentioned, there is an article in Be More Art. There is an article in Harper's Bazaar. So also keep an eye out for that information, share it with friends and everything. I'm excited to go read that article, and congratulations. That's so exciting.
Thank you. Yes, it really was. Like I said, it was a sort of a change of pace for us in terms of the type of feature. Mom has been featured for most of my life in things, but they have been literary kinds of things. This was a little different. And there's also a short clip from WBAL TV. So I think if you Google WBAL and the Clifton House or Lucille Clifton, this clip would show up, and it gives you just a little bit of the interior of the house if you're curious.
Oh, that's great. That's really good to know. Okay. Well, thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Alexia. This was wonderful. It was so fun learning about this, and I'm excited to visit the Clifton House once it opens.
Great, yay. We're excited to have you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. We'll stay in touch.
Definitely. Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Okay. Good night. Thank you. Thanks for your questions.